All right, we can close this file. Next up, we're going to be working with layer effects and layer styles. And these are pretty cool because they allow us to transform very simple things into something that looks much more detailed. So we are going to create a new document and make some text layers and see how these work. So let's do create new, and we're going to create, there we go, we're going to do a custom document. We are going to make it 8 inches wide, so I'm over here in the width tool, 8 inches by 4 inches. And we would like this to be 300 dots per inch. If we want it to be 8 inches wide, we need to be in landscape orientation, so it's wider than it's tall. 300 dots per inch. And the color mode doesn't matter right now. We're doing this just as a demo, but remember RGB is for web output, CMYK is for print output. And we'll just say create. All right. Why we have a regular layer is kind of beyond me. The good thing is we can turn a regular layer into a background layer and a background layer into a regular layer as needed. So if we wanted this to be a regular layer turned into a background layer, we can do that by going up to Layer, there you are, Layer, New, and then we're going to call this a background from a layer. Okay, there we go. Now we have a new background filled with our background color. And of course, I prefer that to be white. So I'm going to fill my background with white. This is probably exactly how yours started because that's usually the default. I must have had in that dialog asked for transparency. Let me just double check that again. File, new. Yep, that's where I went wrong. So in this document window that I started with and I said 8 by 4, 300, I failed to pay attention to this. The background contents typically are just white. So had I done that and said create, I would have had the document I wanted right from the start. Again, that's something that we did a couple weeks ago with the color wheel, and I haven't reset my workspace, so that's my own fault. Oops. All right, so we currently have a background layer. We don't need both of them, just one's going to be fine. All right, we are going to take our text tool and we're going to type our name. So get the text tool and I'm going to just drag out a box here. It doesn't even matter because it's not going to be the right size, and I'm going to type in my name. And we're going to wait for the powers that be to run my computer. There it is. Okay, doesn't really matter what we do here, but we're going to make this fairly big for our demonstration. I'm going to make it 72 dots per inch. I'm going to center it, and I'm going to kind of make it a little bit more of a stylized font so we can see the effects showcased a little bit differently. So use a font of your choice. I'm going to do, this is not one you are going to have, but I'll find one you do have. Let me just see what we could do. Scripts are hard. Really, it doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm making this so difficult. I'm going to choose Amaretta Dark. All right. Because it's a type layer, we're going to say OK whenever you have it done. We look over at our layers panel, and we indeed have a layer 1 that when my spinning beach ball is done spinning, it will show up. There we go. Yay! With the layer selected, go down to the bottom of your layer panel and click on the FX button. And here are some of the different layer effects: bevel and emboss, stroke, inner glow, etc., etc. Let's just start with bevel and emboss. The layer style dialog box that pops up. On the left-hand side, we see all of the different options that showed up in the FX button. When we click the check mark next to it, it is going to be applied. So right now we are going to be applying a bevel and emboss. And if you can't see it, you need to keep moving the sliders. So I'm starting to see it here. There's an inner bevel, there is an outer bevel. That's bad. There is an embossing, also bad because I have it up really high in my percentages. So really bad. I have pillow emboss as an option and stroke emboss. I think before I do anything else here, I'm going to cancel out and I'm going to make this a different color, which interestingly enough we can do with special effects. So if you come down to the FX, there is an option called color overlay, and when that's highlighted you can change the color just by putting an overlay on it. So by doing that, I change the color. If I turn off all these special effects, the black original color is still underneath there. So now that I have a color overlay, perhaps I can come into bevel and emboss. I'm going to go back to inner bevel, and we have a lot of different options here that you can see. I have never not been able to see these previews, and I'm wondering what is going on. Oh, there we go. I don't know why I had to go so crazy with the percentages, but there we see it. So inner bevel, outer bevel, that's way too crazy. Again, all of these sliders are going to change the size of it. It's going to make it look like it comes up or it goes away from you. You can change the contour with these different overlays. Let's see how those all are different. And anything within here you can tweak. So if you don't like any of this, simply uncheck it back here. We can move on to the stroke option. This is going to put a stroke of a certain size either on the inside, outside, or center of your text. If you put it at the inside, it makes your type look smaller. So look at the letter R. If we put it at the outside, look at how much thicker it is. All of that black stroke is pushed to the outside of my letter form. So make sure that you're paying attention to that as well. We can change blend modes with our strokes. We can change the opacity of the stroke and the color of the stroke. Another option is the inner shadow. And again, the amount of size, how much shadow is being cast towards the inside. You can kind of see it here. I'll turn off my stroke and you can kind of see how it's darker up here. It almost looks like it has a gradient fill on it. So you can change the opacity, you can change the blending mode of it, how it's going to behave. You can change the distance that it's coming in. All of these are options for you to tweak this. Inner glow, that was a little bit harder to see, but it puts, in this case, you have to be highlighted as well. This is putting a whitish glow on the inside of my letter form. Satin looks like this. Again, you can change your sliders to get different looks. You can do gradient overlays as well. When you click on that, you can come into your gradient editor, twirl something open, and apply them. And my color overlay is probably blocking that. Couldn't see it because I had a red color overlay on it already. We can choose pattern overlays. We have some strange patterns in here, trees and leaves. Outer glow, this is one that can be helpful if you have a different colored background. So let me just show you this. I'll say okay to that. I'm going to add a new layer underneath here of, I don't know, something darker. I'm going to fill that. And I'm going to rearrange it. There. Now the outer glow is very obvious. So sometimes when you have dark type on a dark background, you don't really have the contrast that you need. It's hard to read. Perhaps adding an outer glow can help with readability and legibility. All of these effects show up here, and they are non-destructive. You can double click on the word outer glow. You can say, yeah, that's too much. I'm going to pull back the opacity a little bit. You could say this would probably look good with a bevel and emboss as well, so I'm going to add that, and maybe a drop shadow, but no. Drop shadows are the opposite kind of an outer glow. An outer glow gives you color, a lighter color all the way around, whereas a drop shadow literally gives you shadowing in one direction, as if there's a light source coming from it. So if I were to turn off this dark background, again, you can see that my yellow outer glow doesn't do much, but if I were to come into my layer styles, turn off the outer glow and turn on the drop shadow, I now have some options to change the opacity of the drop shadow, how far away it is from my letters. You can see I can make the shadow go quite a ways away, the spread and the size. And then if you want a full-on dark shadow, normal blend mode, darken blend mode, multiply, whatever different blend mode you might want here. All right. The other thing you can do is change the lighting source. So by pulling this around, you can have your drop shadow, maybe you want it to be lit from the bottom and the drop shadow cast to the top and backwards. You can spin this around to change your light source. Use global light should be checked, because if you have a drop shadow falling to the bottom and right of this word and you were to put another word on here, you would want the same light source to be affecting it or anything else on your document in the same way. You'd want the light source to be coming from the same place. So by turning on use global light, that will happen. The drop shadows will all be in the same area. So you can create a whole bunch of these and say, you know what, this is my dream right here. I really like this. And if you want to, you can save this as a new style and give it a name. The layer effects definitely need to come along. If you have any blending modes, you should check that. And I don't need this in my library, but I could call this demo effects. And if I wanted to use it over and over, it's now an option for me. The other thing you can do, if I didn't do that, was just to say okay. And back in my layer panel, I see that I do have effects turned on, stroke, gradient, and drop shadow. I turned off the outer glow. And with this FX showing here, I can right click on this and I can say copy layer style. And then I could go to another layer with text on it. I could right click and say paste layer style. Or I could simply drag this FX down onto another layer to apply it that way as well. So there's lots of different things in here. It's kind of fun. You can see what inner glows, shadows, color overlays look like. This is really going to come in handy when you're designing things that need some help with the text popping. Either the background's too dark or you need maybe a drop shadow to give it a little bit of depth. So lots of cool things here. We can add those to our layer styles, and we can use those later on when we see our effects panel. So cool stuff. Let's close that down. We don't need to save it, and we'll move on to our next video.